And we are back here on the Analyticaliowan podcast. This is going to be a TikTok extra podcast for tomorrow, February 6th. Decided to go live late night. Had a great live with Will, our friend from Georgia, where we discussed a lot of things. So we are going to be discussing news, politics, and everything else going on. And if anybody's got anything to discuss when it comes to news and politics, of course, I hope they drop it in the comments. This is a later night TikTok live. I was going to go live earlier, and then I jumped in with Will. So we will see what is up with everybody out there. We got a lot to talk about. And I've done multiple TikToks today, more than I typically do. I think I'm up to 11 or 12 for the day, which is a lot for me. I see Bren's out there. Hey, Bren. Bren's watching from work. Well, love the dedication. Glad you can join from work. Not everybody is that fortunate where they can actually join in and do things like that. I know I've had other jobs where I was able to at least wear an earbud and listen into, like, I would listen to Mike's podcast and other things like that while working. But not everybody gets that ability. So I am jealous of some people who get the ability to actually watch lives and join in and comment while they're working. Brent says, I think I will be listening more tonight. Well, if that's all you can do, that's all you can do. But I'm glad you're here. I know you wanted to be in and be notified whenever I go live. So I remembered to send you out the invite. We got a lot to talk about. And I've done multiple TikToks today. I think I'm up to 11 or 12. Normally, I'm lucky if I get 4 or 5 in a single day. And I've got even more I could probably do and pre-set up for tomorrow, just because we've got so much to talk about. And one of the things we got to talk about is that Donald Trump at the National Prayer Breakfast and how he was at an event for religious leaders and a national day of prayer, and he didn't burst into flames is beyond me. You figure somebody like him would be the exact opposite of who would be welcome at one of those type of events. But he admitted something, I believe, during that event where he was talking about elections, and he was talking about 2020, and he admitted that it is for his ego as to why he had to win in 2020. Now, we knew that it was all about his ego, that his ego would not let him admit he lost. And that is something that, now he's confirming. And he doesn't even realize, I don't think, that he is confirming that. It was met with some chuckles and stuff at the event. So, of course, his supporters are going to say, well, he was going to, he was joking. That's what his supporters always say. Madeline says, bursting into flames, hope it happens. I mean, I've never believed that spontaneous human combustion was possible. But, I mean, if it could happen to anybody by being at a religious event or going into a church, I think it would happen to him. And this is from somebody who, based on some metrics, because of how long it's been since I have attended a church service, people would probably say the same thing about me. But Donald Trump is not a religious type. He wants his supporters to believe he is. He will use religion as a grift and as a crutch and as a way to end up supporting himself and to get voters, etc. But that does not make him the It does not make him religious by any means. He's even admitted that. Suave says, what if we concede he won in 20? Then he's already passed his 4 more years and we can boot him. No, unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. There is no mechanism to retroactively award him the 2020 presidency. And it would be great if it did, but that would, even if we could do that somehow, it would still leave us with J.D. Vance, Vance would still be better than Donald Trump for multiple reasons. One of the reasons being, I still firmly believe that Vance is going to be given very strict marching orders by this administration. And when Donald Trump is gone, he is going to be told to right the ship, to fix everything. And you're going to see a lot of what Donald Trump was pushing going to drop by the wayside. And it may not happen publicly. It may not be, something that we hear about, but you're going to see like members of the cabinet, they're going to get replaced. You're going to see immigration, for example. You're going to see, while they're still going to be talking immigration, the ICE raids and those kind of things are going to quietly get rolled back. Suave says, Vance will screw the pooch so bad. Vance isn't going to fix anything, but he is going to be given multiple directives in order to fix it. Jay says, Trump will get 4 more years due to 2020. Constitution crisis and first in history stuff coming. No, he's not. He is not going to get 4 more years. There is no mechanism for him to get 4 more years. His term will be up come January 20th, 2029. They don't have the votes to change the Constitution to make it any different than that. And they won't be able to make it so he can run. The 22nd Amendment is very clear. No person can be elected to the office of president more than twice unless you assumed the role of president to which somebody else had been elected, and then you can serve a maximum of 10 years. If they meant if they meant that you could have 2 consecutive terms and you could get a third for being non-consecutive, they would have said that, because by the time they wrote the 22nd Amendment, Grover Cleveland had already had 2 non-consecutive terms. They knew it could be a thing. They were aware. They would have written it that way. This is just a ploy by Donald Trump because he doesn't want to give up the power, and he doesn't want people talking about the next guy. He doesn't want us considering the fact that there could be somebody else. Shrimphead Jr. says, so son, are you anti-American? And you're gone. Because yes, I am 100% American. Just because I criticize this administration does not make me anti-American. Karen says Vance would be 100 times worse. No, I don't think he will. He's not going to be worse because he doesn't have the support of the MAGA base. He doesn't have the support in Congress, and they are going to have him on such a tight leash that it is not funny. J.D. Vance is going to be very, very tightly controlled. Mr. Jeep Guy says President Trump will go down in history as the savior of America. No, he will not. He's going to go down as the worst president we've ever had. And there are going to be a lot of changes coming out from this administration where they change how future administrations work because of how things went with him. That just like they did after FDR, where they decided to put in a 2-term limit, there are going to be changes added so that this never happens again. Miles says, do you think talking about this stuff out you in danger? I'm worried about getting Clinton. Nope, not worried at all. And you're gone. Virgil says America needs Trump. No, we don't. Jay says no mechanism, hence constitutional crisis. Supreme Court would vote in favor. No, not even this Supreme Court would vote in favor of doing that, because if they decided to agree with Donald Trump and that he could run for an extra term or whatever, or that he gets 4 more years because of 2020, then what would stop the next president from saying that, well, you guys were improperly appointed because of how Mitch McConnell held a seat open in 2016 for 11 months because it was too close to the election in February. So I think it was Gorsuch, you're gone. Or was it Kavanaugh? One of the two would be gone. And then they could say the same thing about Amy Coney Barrett and say, well, because it was too close to the election, you don't get to actually be on the Supreme Court. You're gone. We're going to replace you. The Supreme Court's not going to do it, because if they grant that kind of authority, the repercussions would be ridiculous against them. Virgil says Trump will make world peace. No, he's not. Mr. Jeep Guy says, wait and see, young man. He's doing it. He will be. About being the savior. No, he's not. Richard says, so will he get another term? Absolutely not. Jay says, 22nd Amendment does not take into account a fraudulent election due to conspiracy. Yeah, there was no fraudulent election. That's the thing. And even so, doesn't matter. There is no way. It doesn't say only if this or only that. It says no person can be elected more than twice. Period. BC Fellow says, worse, you are delusional. No. Blue says, 100% agree about the changes that will be made after. And Reba says, yes, they are going to make sure no felon is president ever again. I think they're going to make a lot of changes like that. You're not going to have a felon as president anymore. You're not going to be and one of the reasons why felons can run right now is that there was never a mechanism to say a felon couldn't, because they never expected the party to ever nominate a felon. D-Man says, well, I love Trump, but he can't run again. Well, you might love Trump, but you're not going to be talking about him here. Brian says, this guy is a rambling opinion generator. That is all. Well, you can take your opinion and go somewhere else. Blue says, to Damon, who I just blocked, says, I'm sure you do love him. After all, he is your Lord and Savior. Yeah, they treat him like he is their Lord and Savior. A BC fellow says, what we need are Kamala or Joe. And I got a feeling that was non-genuine, so you're gone. And this is something bizarre by people on the right. I already blocked D-Man, but he says, no, Blue, he is your daddy, though. Why do they have this weird obsession with referring to Donald Trump as daddy? It's bizarre. Wildlife Pro says, talking about me being an opinion generator, says pretty damn decent opinions. Well, thank you. There's no username there, but it says, do you think the American people will take back the government one day? 110%. It starts in the midterms. I think that, and Republicans, and I think even the talking heads in Iowa here are going to end up, or the talking heads on the media are going to end up being surprised by the actual outcome. I think the House flips by 40 seats, maybe more, despite the gerrymandering. And I think there is a good chance the Democrats take the Senate. Bulldog says, asked if I participated in the Iowa caucuses, and unfortunately I did not. I actually forgot they were happening until they were actually over. This guy says both sides are two wings of the same bird. Not even close. They are not even close. You got one side that is supporting pro-authoritarianism, 1930s Germany policies, and the other side that is still actually trying to support the people. Bulldog says it's called voting, and these ballots are corrupt. Voter is needed. No. You're gone. Superior Sedilla says, of course they call the felon daddy. He feeds them lies and they live off of it. 100% they do. And yeah, you're gone too. I don't deal with Trump supporters. I don't deal with MAGA and these two sides of the same bird people. They're not helping us. Larry says, I'm blue 65. The world will probably change so much before I die. Can't wait. Oh, it's going to change. And it's going to change quick. What's the big thing that's going to change and change quickly about it here is coming up, the baby boomers are unfortunately fading away. They're going to end up not being the biggest voting bloc anymore. That is shifting down to the combination of millennials and Gen Z. And that voting bloc is going to come up, specifically Gen Z. I think Gen Z did vote in favor of Donald Trump quite a bit this last election. They realize they've gotten lied to about how things are going. And they're going to come up and they are going to deal with it. And when they start making changes, as I saw somebody else talking about it, a lot of the Gen Z students, as they were coming up through school, they were taught more about group projects. They did a lot more learning in groups, and it wasn't all based on individual success. And they're coming up with that idea and that mentality now going, why can't we work together? Why can't we fix things? Why can't we do things to support everybody? Why does it have to be, I've got mine, screw you guys? And that is going to end up being one of the biggest changing factors, as they are going to be supporting candidates that think that way. User credit card number says, remember, Democratic Biden opened the border for 4 years to protect America. 188,000 children missing. No, border was never open. And you're gone. That is a Republican talking point. What Biden did is he encouraged people to come in the right way, which you guys say you love, but then you have ICE going into courtrooms where these people are trying to get their immigration hearing. They are trying to get their legal status. They're trying to do it the right way, and you're hauling them off and throwing them out of here. That's not the right way to do it. What Biden did, he supported immigration the right way. He supported people being able to apply for asylum, which we have always granted and we are required under international treaties to accept. And at one point, he wanted to end up passing. They had a bill that would have been the most comprehensive immigration bill ever passed. And it gave Republicans a big chunk of what they wanted. In fact, it gave them so much, they haven't even been able to pass that same immigration bill under Donald Trump. But what happened? Donald Trump said, no, I don't. It's a bad bill. Kill it. I want to run on immigration in the midterms. And he did. And the Republicans did vote down on that bill. It would have actually fixed a bunch of things. The biggest thing that would fix immigration is fixing the backlog of immigration cases where you got people waiting years and years in order to get before a judge to actually have their immigration case heard. Larry says, good point, boomers being gone. Yes. Blue says to user credit card number, just another MAGA talking point talking about open borders. You're boring. Got anything else? Yeah, that's all they've got is talking points. Wildlife Pro says, we aren't dead yet. Talking about, I'm assuming the baby boomers. Yeah, it's not that they're all going away. It's that they are no longer going to be the largest voting bloc because some of them are going away. Or they are now at the end of, they're getting up there in age where getting to vote is not going to be as easy for them. So it is going to be a shift in the voting bloc. We're not going to be at the will of the boomers anymore. And younger people are actually running to fill some of these seats. It is going to be much different. Andrew says Texas is turning blue. Just wait. It is entirely possible. Wildlife Pro says that's great news. It could be. Texas could be blue. It is entirely possible that either James Tallarico or Jasmine Crockett flips Texas Senate seat blue, especially if they end up selecting Ken Paxton as their candidate, which is entirely possible because Ken Paxton, I believe, is much easier to beat than James Corman. Scott says, every few days I hear of a boomer friend acquaintance gone. Yeah. Brian says, whatever. Well, Brian, you can go somewhere else. Larry says, we will have to work together, blue and red. Maybe the youth will be able to. Oh. Well, maybe I was a little hasty with Brian. Because he says now, and Trump's a felon and in the Epstein files. So yeah, you're right. And Brian, maybe I was wrong about you. Mockle says, I called MAGA parrots because they always repeat the same thing. No context or details. Yeah, though they never have either. NGEM says, when I'm retired on my way out, I'm voting for candidates my grandkids choose. Not a bad plan. Blue says, can we talk about this Tulsi Gabbard thing? What's going on with that? Well, there is a whistleblower complaint against Tulsi Gabbard, and I don't know the entirety of it because it is considered, national security. It is extremely classified. And it got stuck in a safe basically since May when it came out because they didn't know how to proceed. It has finally been given to the appropriate members of Congress who have the clearance to look at it. Now, where it goes beyond that, I have no idea. And I'm expecting at some point we are going to get a version of that tells us, without interfering with national security or classified information, what it was actually about. GT Senior says, because we in Texas are pissed. Yeah. Texas is pissed about a lot of what's going on. And GT Senior also says, Texas politicians don't listen to Texans. Yeah, exactly. It is... Texas, I think, is going to be on the verge of flipping. I think there's going to be a lot of places that flip. And once things improve under Democratic leadership in some of these places, it's going to be hard for Republicans to regain footholds. And if Democrats turn Texas to where it is reliably flipping blue in every presidential election, even for a few, as long as they don't lose New York or California, it will be almost impossible for Democrats to lose a presidential election with the Electoral College. Wildlife Pro says, I have used facts to get my grandkids to see how bad the whole Trump group is. Success. Yeah, if you use facts, it is pretty easy to show exactly what's going on. That's the problem with the Republicans. They say we're the ones acting on emotion and feelings, but we have facts on our side. They just don't like the facts, and they don't like the facts and where they come from. So they want to dismiss us. They will also use Google searches to find the facts and the sites that side with them. They will see 99 sources that all say, that something this administration is doing is wrong or illegal. They will find one right-wing source that actually sides with them, and they will point to that as their proof that they're doing things the right way. It's just crazy. NGEM says more and more corruption. It's insane. It is. Jennifer asks GT Senior, what do you think about Bobby Cole, who is running for governor? Thoughts from the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I don't know. Myself, I don't know about any of it. I just think with as bad as Greg Abbott has been, is going to end up being easier to beat. I am trying to go ahead. I just blocked somebody. It's very much a scam. They were asking about messaging for receiving money. Just a reminder, if anybody messages you to receive money, do not follow it. It is more than likely a very big scam. Lucy Dog says Texas is very rigged. It is. They are going, Texas is gerrymandered to hell and back, but the problem is, like with what they did with the House of Representatives in Texas, they took seats that were reliably, say 65 to 70% Republican, and they took voters out of that group and shifted them with Democratic voters from other districts to now where if everybody votes the way they always have, it would be a Republican by 55% district, thinking they'll still win. Problem is, look at what happened in that special election in Texas, where the Democrat comes out and takes a Trump by 22% district and flips it and has like a 30-point swing. When you've already diluted your voting pool and you're looking at big gains like that, and it's not going to work. You've diluted your voting pool at this point. It is going to be harder for you to keep those seats. Mockel says Republicans have been trying to gain a foothold in New York City for years, since Bloomberg and Giuliani. Yeah, they're trying. I just don't think they're going to win. Shauna says, how do you think Iowa is going to do in the midterms? We are going to, in my opinion, Iowa is going to have a Democratic governor. We are going to have Governor Rob Sand. I think we are going to make gains in both chambers in the Iowa legislature. And I think it is very possible we could end up with at least two Republican members of the House of Representatives, as well as potentially a Democratic senator. You add in the fact that Joni Ernst is not running. We do not currently have an incumbent senator here in Iowa. I think it makes the chance for an Iowa pickup better. It is very much possible that Iowa at least goes purple on its path back to being blue. Nina says GOP equals guardians of people in the Epstein files. And that's 100% correct. GT Senior says, my district was changed and the Democrat will win. Well, that's good to hear. And I think some of those districts, that's exactly what's going to happen. They are going to be gaining popularity. Oilfield Monkey says, my vote went where it was supposed to go. What do you mean by that? Shauna says, I'm so glad we're on the same page with Iowa. Well, I'm good to hear. I think Iowa's got a good chance. We used to be blue or purple at least. I mean, we voted for Obama twice, and then the Republicans dug up Terry Branstad and fucked everything up. Patrick says, did you hear that Kamala Harris is going to take over the speaker? No, I don't think that's going to happen. That's one of the theories I saw coming up after the Harris campaign website put up that TikTok teaser. And I've seen people say, well, she's going to end up being Speaker of the House in 2027 after the midterms. It's not going to happen unless she runs for and wins a House seat. I don't think it's going to happen. Patrick says Trump and Vance to be impeached. Well, yeah, it's entirely possible, but unless they impeach him together, and it's going to take Republicans to agree to remove both, and it would be harder for them to agree to, like, they're not going to remove Trump and Vance to promote the speaker if it's a Democrat, right? They're going to remove, if they do anything, what they would do is they would remove Trump, give Vance a chance to pick his own VP, and if they decide to remove Vance second, he would be gone and his VP would take over. That's how that would work. They're not. I don't see any way that the Republicans ever agree to vote for impeachment and removal of Trump and Vance at the same time to where it would promote a Democratic speaker. It's a long shot, and I'm not going to get my hopes wrapped up on that long shot. It sounds completely crazy. It sounds like what MAGA was trying to say going into 2021 after Joe Biden won. They were saying the same thing about Donald Trump, that Trump was going to be made Speaker of the House. He never was. That they were going to remove Biden and Kamala together, and Trump was going to be back in office. It never happened. It's just not going to work. People that are spreading it are either purposefully spreading it, misinformation, or they don't understand what's going on, or they're just hopeful for some kind of major change and hoping that we can make that big of a move. It's just not going to work. GT Senior says these Republicans don't realize we hate Trump in Texas. Well, it's good to hear. It's good to hear that Texas hates Trump. Because that just gives me hope that Texas can flip at least purple. And if they lose Texas and they lose some of these other areas, it's going to be a wake-up call. Republicans aren't going to see it coming. I mean, they're talking about it a little bit, about having to defend Texas, about what it's going to cost them money-wise, because they're worried about having to end up coming out and investing a big chunk of money in Texas, and that is money they could be spending in other races, and it's going to make them less competitive in other areas. Brent says Mike Johnson has been silent. Yeah, he has been relatively silent. I mean, he's probably trying to stay under the radar. Patrick says half of them are involved with the Epstein stuff. Yeah, they are. And they need to be gone. Problem is, in order to remove them, you're going to need Republicans. Democrats are not going to be able to pick up enough seats to flip the Senate with enough votes to unilaterally push an impeachment through. I think one of the last times Democrats had a supermajority, they only had it for a few weeks under the Obama administration rather, and they had 60 seats. Getting to 67 is going to be a near impossibility. They are going to be lucky to flip 4 and just have they need 4 flips and no losses in order to just have control of the Senate. That needs to be our focus right now, is just gaining the Senate. GT Senior says the winds of change will come from Texas. Good. Hope so. I would love to see winds of change out of Texas. Andrew says, I'm out. Thanks for the chat, but one thing. Okay. Well, thanks for joining me. I don't know what one thing you're gonna throw up. If you want to catch the rest of this live, it will be up tomorrow over on my YouTube page, Analyticaliowan, over there on YouTube. I post all my lives. This one is going to be a an extra Analytical Iowan podcast for tomorrow. I'm going to be doing a regular podcast tomorrow as well. Encourage you to check it out. I put all the videos from my lives as well as my daily podcast up on YouTube, and the audio will be available over on Spotify. Twilight says, thank you, brother. Well, you're welcome. Patrick says, Sasha Riley did a closed-door meeting before the shutdown. And also says, Graham Jordan Biggs in the Sasha Riley thing. I mean, I would love to see something come out of the Sasha Riley interview. There are reasons I believe things with Sasha Riley could be true. The biggest reason as to why I think it could be true is that we're not hearing anything about Donald Trump, and he's not talking about it. He's not threatening to sue. He's not saying anything. He's trying not to draw attention to it. Now, normally, if somebody attacks him, he wants to hit them back. He would threaten to sue them. Oh, it's defamation, it's this or it's that. But he's not doing that. He is completely ignoring everything Sasha Riley related, which to me gives it more credibility because, he's afraid of what could come out if he tries to sue Sasha Riley, I think, in discovery. Patrick says Trump has been wearing diapers for over 30 years. We had heard about that. We had heard that he was wearing them while doing The Apprentice, and that they would sometimes have to do reshoots or stop filming or whatever because he had relieved himself. If they hadn't propped him up with The Apprentice, he wouldn't have, he might not have had the success that he did going into the election, and he wouldn't have brought in the followers he did. Maybe he wouldn't have won the nomination in 2016. Patrick also says his general doctor was a gastrointestinal doctor. I hadn't heard that, but that would be interesting if it was true. And the whole thing with that, Donald Trump could prove it or disprove it with medical records. But he doesn't want to do that. I think there's something in there he doesn't want us to see, whether it is this, where it is, he is afraid of being outed for why he wears adult diapers, or whether there is something worse in there, like the fact that he is suffering from some kind of dementia. I think either one is entirely possible. Donald Trump doesn't want us talking about his health. And did you see the latest executive order signing where he's in the Oval Office and it's not so much that he is holding the pen, like the Sharpie, like you would expect, up close. He's holding it back by the base and he's kind of pushing his signature along that way. It looked right, but it was a very weird handhold. And then when he went to point at his signature, and he said, well, I'm not going to hold it up. To hold up just a single piece of paper it's kind of unnecessary. And then he points at the executive order with his pinky. It seemed weird. It seemed off. And that can be sometimes a sign of somebody who has dementia or has had traumatic brain injury, maybe a stroke, that you tell your body to do one thing and the wires get crossed and your brain does something different. Like maybe he meant to point with his pointer finger, but instead he points with the wrong finger. He's not in good shape. I think it's entirely possible that he could end up not making it all the way to 2028 with the way his health is. Patrick says he is playing with crayons and no prit like his father. I mean, the thing is, we could have probably saved ourselves a lot of hassle by just allowing him to put up a fake a fake Oval Office at Mar-a-Lago, let him hold press conferences and things with TV cameras that aren't running, etc., and tell him that he's the president. He probably wouldn't have known the damn difference. That's what they did with his father. They set up an office for him at his work. I think it was still the Trump organization then, or whatever branch of the organization it was that his father was in charge of. And he ended up going into work. They would give him paperwork that meant nothing. His signature didn't apply anymore, and they would have him sign the stuff and show him things and everything where he thought he was still running his company up until the day he couldn't anymore. Because they didn't want his dad, Fred Trump, wasn't willing to accept the fact that he was losing touch because of the dementia. Patrick says, are you aware about the Underground World PBF? If you're talking about an underground worldwide Epstein-style ring, it wouldn't surprise me. I'm not 100% aware of what you're talking about, but it wouldn't surprise me that the rich and the powerful are connected in some way with all of that. Wouldn't surprise me at all. Not in the least. Not in the least. I see TKS Daddy's out there. Haven't seen you out for a bit, but glad to see you're back. This whole thing with Donald Trump and the files is very telling, right? TKS Daddy says, it seems to explain King James writing a book on demonology and witchcraft first. I don't know what you're talking about, unless you're talking about King James doing it before his version of the King James Bible. Patrick says Epstein stayed at the Vatican with Pope John II. I think we talked about that one of my other lives. I'm not overly familiar with it. It would kind of surprise me, but then again, with the way the Catholic Church has moved around priests and protected them when they have done some horrific things, maybe not. There was a priest when I was a kid in my hometown. He was accused by several girls, including the sister of a friend of mine at the time. And they moved him to a different church or a different parish that didn't have a school. And basically they said that whenever they move him around, they're going to keep moving him to places that didn't have a school. That didn't mean they didn't have children. And they did and they considered it case closed. And there were tons of people in my hometown that said, well, he's a man of God. Why would he do something like that? Well, it happens. And the fact that they didn't want to investigate it, looking back at it now, to me, gives it even more credibility. There should have been more of an investigation. And if it was true, he shouldn't have been allowed to continue as a priest. TKS Daddy says, there is a royalty link to the support of the papacy and the Swiss Guard. Not good. There's always been links to from royalty to the Pope, etc. Back in medieval times, there were a lot of times the Pope was actually, I wouldn't say appointed, but if they had backing of nobility of like the French king and places like that, they had a better chance of being elected. Patrick says, are you aware of the pizza and grape soda parties in Hollywood? No, I'm not. Patrick, Nauseous Ambient says, awesome to see you live, sir. Well, thank you. Glad you could join me. Hope you enjoy the live. Since you just got here, reminder that you can catch the entirety of it over on my YouTube page. It'll be up sometime later on Friday over at Analyticaliowan at YouTube. I post all my lives up there. This is going to end up being an extra Analyticaliowan podcast. I've got another one that I'm going to record for tomorrow because there's so much to talk about. Patrick says Rob Reiner was taken out by the PDF. From what I understand, it was by his own son. I don't know if there was any other connection there. TKS Daddy says it was accurately described as the Principality of Rome. Okay, that's interesting. Patrick says the Twin Towers were about PDFs, not terrorists. I don't believe that. I don't think so. That doesn't make a lot of sense. I firmly believe it was still terrorists trying to attack symbols of American, the American economy, etc. TKS Daddy says the Twin Towers were about Saudi Arabia paying off others so they could be non-religious. Patrick says Lutnick was a large company. Talk about Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary. I mean, I think he did have a big company. I don't know a lot about him, though. TKS Daddy says, and Iran had a reason. We stole Iranian democracy for over 60 years for the United Kingdom. TKS Daddy says, the Venezuelan claim that we own their oil goes directly to the UK claim of owning Iranian oil. Well, that's interesting. Last I had heard, Venezuela was saying we didn't have any control over their oil. And I thought I saw something saying that Donald Trump gave back the money made from the sale of the oil back to Venezuela. I haven't been able to confirm that, but I thought I saw something about that. Ox says Lutnick's company was in the towers. He didn't work that day and was the only survivor. That's weird. And I wish if there's any truth to that, I wish there was more evidence other than speculation because he wasn't there. TKS Daddy says Trump hasn't even paid ICE. No, we're hearing that ICE has not been getting their paychecks. They're having trouble accessing health insurance. And when it comes to this bonus that they were getting for joining, it was $10,000 a year for 5 years, but they have to stay the whole time. Now, the problem is it basically turns it into almost like I was in a different live earlier. Somebody referred to it like the company store, and it kind of is, because you owe $50,000 and you get $10,000 every year, or is what your bonus is supposed to be. But for every year you work, you only get the full amount if you work all 5 years. But you also, if you don't work 5 years for ICE, you don't get to keep the full amount. So if you work a year, you have to pay back the $10,000 bonus. Problem is they're going to tax it, so you're only going to get about $6,500. But then when you leave, you have to pay them back all 10 grand. But they had already took, $3,500 as taxes. So it's basically keeping them working. And as TKS Daddy says, and it's extremely convoluted, and 20,000 only available if you're a returning officer. Yeah, so if you're coming back, you don't even get the full 50, you get even less. And TKS Daddy also says, and if you don't meet quota or last 3 years, you'll owe back all back. Well, no, it's if you don't last 5 years, unless it's the 3 years for returning officers. But either way, you have to end up working a certain number of years, or you owe it all back, plus the amount that they took in taxes. And these people they're not going to have the funds to do that. They're just not. So they're going to have to stick it out. And what happens when in 2029 there's a Democratic president? They're going to all probably be let go, and they're going to potentially owe all that money back, and they're going to be left holding the bag for something Donald Trump set up. Patrick says Trump talked about it and Lutnick laughed about it and was spinning a story that he predicted it in a book. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Donald Trump claims that he wrote in, well, he didn't predict it in one of his books, but he said about one of his books or whatever that he had talked about 9/11 or something potentially happening, that he had talked to Pete Hegseth at the time about it. At the time, Pete Hegseth was like just out of high school, maybe 20 something, either late teens, early 20s. He was a college frat boy. He wasn't in the National Guard. He wasn't anybody. He wasn't a Fox News host. He had no connection to Donald Trump then. And Donald Trump tried to say that they were discussing 9/11 back then. That is just ridiculous. But it's typical Donald Trump. Patrick says Lutnick was in the E-files and on the island. Now that I believe. That I would believe. TKS Daddy said Fox had to cut him off when he started saying more imaginary math. Are you talking about the press conference today about the pharmaceutical prices, where they were announcing their plans to cut those and make them cheaper? Because we finally got an idea for how he... TKS Daddy says the one today, but there was another issue where they cut him short. Yeah, whenever he starts talking math, they cut him short because he shows he doesn't know how percentages work. What they were talking about today was this favored nation pricing that Donald Trump is pushing to get us lower prescription drug prices. And what they are going to do, he claims that there are going to be weight loss drugs that are $1,300 now, going to be dropped all the way down to $199. And he says, well, we're dropping it like 500 and some percent. Well, when you backtrack the math, what he is doing is he's taking how many times you'd have to increase the lower price to get back to the original price and saying he's saving you that many percent. And that's not how it works at all. He's proving he doesn't know how math works. TKS Daddy says he did fail at statistics and only had a 73 IQ on his best day that flagged him for extra help. That I would 100% believe. Nauseous Ambient says we are unwilling participants in a horrific narcissistic relationship on a massive scale. Yeah, we are. And we are all going to end up with PTSD over it. Patrick says, what is up with the owner of TMZ is a PDF? I don't know. I hadn't heard that one yet. TKS Daddy says, talking about Trump's IQ and the extra help that he needed, says, and the syphilitic dementia isn't helping. No, it's not. Not at all. He's clearly suffering from some things, and he doesn't even realize it. Patrick says, TMZ shut their live feed down on Monday on a live chat with the comments. Oh, interesting. Again, I hadn't seen that the owner of TMZ was in the files, but if he is, and there's any way to hold them accountable, that's what we need to do. No, Donald Trump is being protected, and he is only hearing the things that he wants to hear. When he comes out and he says things like we have the hottest economy in the world, he means it because that's what they're telling him about the economy. They are telling him that it is the best economy we've ever had, that everything is awesome. He doesn't know and doesn't understand why we are saying the economy sucks. When he says grocery prices are down, that's what the people around him are telling him. We got the jobs numbers for the month of January, and he lost 60,000 jobs in the month of January. That is ridiculous. Basically, every month almost, he has lost jobs. And for the most part, once they started to fix everything coming out of COVID, Joe Biden had consistent months of growth. He ended up having, 15 million jobs grown in his presidency, way more than what were lost in COVID. Michael says the only thing Trump is good at is conning MAGA. Exactly. He's very good at conning MAGA. They are easily fooled and easily separated from their money. TKS Daddy says the rest of the world was jealous of our recovery. We had one of the best recoveries after we got rid of Donald Trump, because we had adults leading the charge, not a toddler who didn't know what he's doing. Cindy says, I believe he has handlers, but he goes off script too much. Yeah, they try to handle him. They tried to handle him and try to control him. Problem is, when you are dealing with a raging narcissist like that, it is very, very hard to get him to follow the script and to stay on track. That's why they use, like, when the teleprompter is not working and things, you see him start to riff and just go. And that's when he says some of the dumbest shit, because he doesn't have the notes in front of him to keep him on track. Patrick says TM lost his shit about comments, got a red face, and had to sit down, had to shut the live down feed like a panic attack. And haven't had one of you guys here in a little bit, but you are gone. Top Dog says Trump derangement syndrome and called me a Democrat. They end up MAGAs don't do anything productive. All they do is end up getting your live taken down. They report you because they don't like what you're saying. They don't have facts, and you hurt their little feelings, and they report you. So I block them. Vic says people who were finally able to go back to work after everything was closed down. Yeah, that was why we had some of the best recovery. Is we got people back to work, and they opened up things like work from home, and they found that it was actually way more productive. But see, one of the reasons Donald Trump goes against work from home is it affects real estate. It's all about people who own commercial office buildings not being needed anymore, because they found out we don't have to have an office where you go and try to get work done to actually be productive. TKS Daddy says the empty dementia face while he's trying to walk around. Oh yeah, he looks lost 90% of the time, because he doesn't know where he is. They've had to put signage up around the White House, kind of as a beacon for him, so he knows where he can get. And you notice how big it is? It's probably because that's the only way he can read it. Cindy says he can't stay on message for long. No, he can't. No, he can't. Patrick says, can I open a live box? I'm not going to do live guests tonight. I do it sometimes. But usually I only do guests if I have one of my mods in the chat, or one of my mods as one of the guests. Even though we haven't had very many Trumpers to block, it is not as easy for me to be dealing with, because I get lost in the conversation talking with people in the box, and then I'm not paying attention and I'm not getting the people that need to be blocked. and I'm not getting taken down because I want to post this over on YouTube. And a lot of times when you get taken down, they don't let you have access to the video clip. So not doing boxes tonight. TKS Daddy says that 80% of high-end properties in New York and London are non-occupancy, like money laundering. Well, that's interesting. Also, TKS Daddy also says, fun fact that the top dog will like Mayor Mitchell, APAC chief from Alabama, was nicknamed Bubba. I hadn't heard that. But that's the second person connected to Donald Trump and co. that had a nickname of Bubba. The other one was Bill Clinton. Cindy says, did you watch him wander around in Norway and get lost? She had to grab his arm. I didn't see that one, no. But it's happened quite a bit. You saw the blank stare when he was in Japan. You were supposed to be walking side by side with the prime minister, and he gets ahead of her, and they were supposed to stop at the American and Japanese flags, turn and bow as part of their cultural ceremony they were doing. And Donald Trump kind of gets ahead of her. He kind of just shuffling. He's got a faraway look in his eye as he's shuffling down the thing. He kind of gets up to the American flag, sees it, gives it a salute, and a weak salute too, and what kind of shuffled away. And he looked like he didn't have a clue where he was, and he probably didn't. And, as much as the Republicans like to say that was Joe Biden, it didn't really happen under Joe Biden. A lot of it was just edited clips to make Biden look that way. Nauseous Ambient says, does Mike Rational Boomer go live much anymore? Yes, he does. He just had a live last night, actually. That was his podcast for Thursday. Was his live from Wednesday night. He does usually, it's about one every week to 10 days or so. He doesn't have a set schedule. And then he occasionally does them over on Substack as well. TKS Daddy says, it's pathetic that he was actually in military school and can't even do a salute. Well, what would you expect from a 5-time draft dodger? For 5 different times, he got selected during Vietnam, and he came up with reasons all surrounding bone spurs as to why he couldn't get drafted and he couldn't go over. And they sent somebody else in his place. Now, we'll have no way of knowing if those people ended up coming home, but he doesn't do a proper salute, and he never should be. He shouldn't be saluting, because even though he's commander of, even though he's commander in chief, he is not a member of the military. He is a civilian. And I just blocked Trump 2028, said most Democrats are lazy misfits and just want free stuff. No, those are all talking points. And, you can go away because you're not adding anything to the conversation. Patrick says, TMZ drops a bunch of papers out of his hands. When I was commenting, I got blocked from comments. Huh. That's interesting. And then you got blocked from the live. Interesting. I'll have to look into that a little bit and see what I can find out about it. Just more out of curiosity than anything. Nasha says, I've seen you over there every now and again. Oh, talk about me being on the Rational Boomers lives? Yeah, if I'm available, I like to jump in on his lives. Last night I would have been part of the live panel for a lot longer, but I knew he was doing one. I just didn't know what time. So I thought I had more time than I did in order to be there on the panel. TKS Daddy says, over the last 30 years from 1994, immigrants have contributed $14.5 trillion to the payoff of debt. Yeah, they have. And that's in part because of the fact that they can't usually, if they're here undocumented or illegally, um, they would end up having to file taxes, but they can't file taxes and claim a refund or anything. So all that money just gets paid into the system and doesn't actually go anywhere. So, that is true. They pay a lot into the system and they get nothing. Now, Republicans would tell you that they get all sorts of government handouts. Problem is, they're not allowed to actually qualify for any federal handouts. And if they get something from the state, that is using state funds, and it's not a federal problem. You need to take it up with your state legislatures and your state politicians about them having access to it. And a lot of times, like when it comes to Medicaid, the only thing that undocumented immigrants get access to is so emergency room care, basically. And that's something Reagan put in place, where emergency rooms are not allowed to turn you away, regardless of your immigration status or your ability to pay. If you need emergency room care, you go in, you get treated at the emergency room, and you deal with it. Cindy says that happened at Banff. Talking about Donald Trump and being led around because he was lost. I'll have to look in and see if I can find that clip, because that would be something. It doesn't surprise me. Every accusation is a confession. They made out Joe Biden to look lost like that, but yet a lot of it was just creatively edited, video, etc. Cindy says he dropped papers too. Okay. Were these the ones that were blank when he dropped them, that had nothing on them? Because maybe I know what you're talking about then. Ron says, when do the Clintons testify? It's probably not televised. Talking about Clinton's testifying before Congress about the Epstein files. I think one testifies it's toward the end of the month. I think one is the 26th or 27th, and I think the other is the 27th or the 28th. I think Hillary testifies one day, Bill the next, something like that. It's toward the end of the month, and the Republicans are going to get smoked in this shit show. I think it's going to be public. I don't think they're going to be able to do it behind closed doors. Republicans wanted it behind closed doors so that way they could control the narrative, and they could, try to cherry pick. And I think a lot of things are going to come out that maybe, it is entirely possible that Bill Clinton will admit maybe not to doing things with underage girls, but the fact that he might have been there and not done anything about what was going on with Epstein is entirely possible, and that he was at least aware of what was going on. And I think they're gonna probably end up having some dirt on Donald Trump, because back then that was when Donald Trump was actually friends with the Clintons, and he has said numerous good things about Bill Clinton. The only one of the two that he ever has anything negative to say is Hillary, and it is going to end up being the only thing he says negative about Hillary has to do with his election against her. If she had never been the nominee that year and he had went up against somebody else, or if he had never been the nominee, he wouldn't be saying those things about her. Scott says, here in Hawaii, coffee is falling on the ground, rotting due to ice taking workers. Can't find pickers. Yeah, that is one of the big problems. Their immigration policies are hurting farmers, and they are hurting people, and they don't even realize it, because they think people that you can go out and find anybody to do that job. The problem is you can't find a lot of people that they would consider qualified, that MAGA would want people who look like me to go out and do that job. Problem is those people aren't doing it for the price that is being offered, and they're not doing it for the at the rate that would be expected by some of the immigrants. that they would need even more money to go at half the speed, and then it becomes, cost ineffective, to where they would have to raise their prices to recoup the cost, and it's already expensive due to tariffs and things. Nosh just says, exactly, they have no idea what it takes to qualify for some of these social programs. No, they don't. No, they don't. They don't have a clue as to what it takes to qualify, but they believe the things that are being told to them by their representatives, by the Republicans, that the problem isn't, when it comes to this fraud and stuff. They believe that anybody can get access. All you got to do is show up, and that there's no vetting of the forms. There's no process. There's no nothing. You just show up and suddenly you get access to all sorts of social programs. That's not how that works. And beyond that, a lot of these immigrants are not going to risk it because they don't want to end up getting caught if they are here undocumented illegally. And they don't want to get caught deported and arrested or anything like that. They're not going to risk it. Same thing with voting. They are not going to risk their status to go vote somewhere. It just doesn't happen. It is a problem that doesn't exist. Cindy says, going to get worse for fruit pickers and ag labor, not to mention beef, soybean, canola farmers. Exactly. You're not going to be able to get the farmhands to do the work because certain groups of people will not do those lines of work. Not to say that that is everybody, and I know it's an overgeneralization, but they won't do it for the price that is required. Some people will when they are when they don't have a choice or it's the best paying job in the area, they might jump on board. But still, it is very hard to get certain demographics to do those jobs. It's just the way it is. Cindy says meat packing plants. Yeah, exactly. That's another job. It is a hard work environment. There are several, obviously, here in Iowa. And they can't get, for the most part, they cannot get workers that are not immigrants because they can't get people, even when they are paying decent money. I know several towns where they have that are close enough to me that have plants, but it's very hard to get workers over there for any amount of money because even though they're the best paying job in town, people still don't want to go do that job. They want even more money on top of what's already being offered. And if you think our prices are high now when it comes to some of this stuff, if they had to start offering what certain demographics are asking to go work those jobs, inflation would be through the roof. Gen X Sooner says, love the fact that other countries are investigating the pervs. Make extradition great again. Yeah. Other countries are leading the charge when it comes to investigating things connected to Little St. James, the island. Some horrific things are coming out. Did you see there was an image shown, and I haven't verified that it was actually in the files, but they are claiming that it is part of the files where there was like a trap door in one of the buildings that led straight into the ocean as a way of getting rid of people. TKS Daddy says, Nicki Minaj is saying she was played by Trump and the old Nicki is back. I don't think it's going to matter. I think the damage is done. That the damage to her credibility and her career and everything, I think, is already done. Not that I was ever necessarily a Nicki Minaj fan. I had a vague passing familiarity with who she was, um, but uh, you know, the damage was done. She saw real quick, and now she went, "Oh well, I learned my lesson." And I think she's going to find out real quick. It's not going to revert back that quick. TKS says, "Thank God I thought Melania was going to have a sequel." Oh yeah. The Melania movie is like the only reason it raised the kind of money that it did was because of the big push to put it out in all the theaters that it did. Most documentaries, which is what it was, would not have been in nearly that many theaters. One of the last high-grossing documentaries, March of the Penguins, was only in like 36 theaters nationwide on opening weekend. Yet Melania was in 1,400. They tried really hard to end up bumping it up and trying to prop it up. It is ridiculous. Cindy says British Island, especially talking about all of the investigations into the files. Yeah, Britain is one of them, and which is very telling considering Prince Andrew is deep in the files, and I think they have even more than what we know about everything already going on. Tony says she's going to be a citizen soon, talking about Nicki Minaj, says Melania did a good job. People just salty. No. And you can go away. TKS Daddy said Christian national groups were doing mass buys. Several creators showed empty theaters. Oh yeah, tons and tons of empty theaters. They had to prop it up. That's the only reason it did nearly as well as what it did. If they didn't prop it up, Cindy says, and the diplomatic rep talking about the diplomatic ambassador to the United States that got fired over his connection to Epstein. That happened, and now they're launching a full investigation into it, and I'm not surprised. That guy Alan said she won't be at the fake halftime. Nicki Minaj? I don't know. If you're talking about Turning Point USA's fake halftime show, they're going to put all this money into it. It's going to flop, and I hope it fails. I hope it fails spectacularly. Let them spend all this money pulling this off. I mean, this is all culture war performative bullshit on their point, and it's all they've got left. And they're going to find out that this culture war bullshit doesn't actually fly. It's not nearly as popular as they think it is. The only reason it's even as popular, or they think it's as popular as it is because for the longest time, people on our side were just, letting them go along to get along, and it's going to be fine. And now we're saying enough is enough, and actually putting them in, showing them that they are not the silent majority. I heard that for years, growing up in a very religious town, that the Christians, we're just a silent majority. We're a majority of the population. No, you're a very vocal minority of the population, the people who think like you. But you have been lied to for so long by certain groups of people that, they don't know what else to do with it. TKS Daddy says Melania shouldn't even be a citizen. Fraudulent visa, you should disqualify her. That is one of the things they can use to actually go through and revoke citizenship if they chose to. And that may be a fallout of this administration after it is all said and done. But I don't think when Donald Trump is gone, she may end up going back to her home country and voluntarily giving up her citizenship. I think she may decide to move and go and try not to have to deal with the fallout. Neil says her movie cost $75 million to make and only made $7 million. That math ain't math, and it's a flop. Yeah, it is a flop. One huge flop. Patrick says Trump in the WWF Hall of Fame and the Butler shooting was all staged. I mean, I don't want to say it was staged, but there was so many things about it that were fucky that makes you go, it could be. Michael says their cultural movement was the Swiftie movement, and they don't want that to end. I don't know what you're talking about. Cindy says, I hope people just don't watch the Super Bowl. Boycott. Why? Because Turning Point USA's fake halftime show is not going to be part of it. That is something they're doing separate. It's going to be an alternative thing that people can tune into. TKS Daddy says, the same security guy that was guiding him for the photo was with Charlie Kirk. That is interesting. I don't know if that is true or not, but still. Neil says, Patrick says, with a few collateral damage, talking about what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania. Yeah, and the thing is, it wouldn't surprise me that Donald Trump actually was willing to let that happen. Neil says, he didn't even talk about it. His ear grew back. Amazing. Yeah. He doesn't talk about it because it did what it needed to do in the moment, and it gave him a boost. It's all it was. It was a ploy. TKS Daddy says, Turning Point and the Trump campaign both funded and planned J6 travel. Yeah, that needed to be better looked at, and a bunch of the higher ups needed to be held accountable, but Merrick Garland didn't do that. They got a bunch of the low-level people, but they didn't get everybody at the top. TKS Daddy, I just talked about that one. Cindy said he should have scar tissue on his ear. He should, but he doesn't. That guy Alan says, I'll be watching. Go Seahawks. Cindy says, I guess so, but need a statement. You're taking from the NFL against Donald Trump. I think their statement was not bowing to pressure and removing Bad Bunny as the halftime entertainment, and then adding in Green Day as the opening act before the game. I think that sends a pretty clear statement. Robin says, what about the BS ad from Israel? I don't know which ad you're talking about. I wish I did. TKS Daddy says, and the fireman's daughter had to run her own fundraiser. TKS Daddy said the Trump fundraiser, 90% went to Lago. The rest split three ways. Yeah, that was the thing. Donald Trump ran the fundraiser, but like 90 cents on every dollar went to him. That's how he is. Everything he does ends up, being a grift. It's all about making himself more money. That guy Ellen says it won't be watching Kid Nicky. No, I'm not watching the Turning Point USA bogus halftime show thing. I'm not going to give them the view. I don't give a shit. Kid Rock hasn't been relevant since the 90s. Neil says Green Day and Bad Bunny all day. Go Seahawks. Yeah. TKS Daddy says, fun fact, Erica Mendel, IDF trainer, is the hate speech monitor on this app. I hadn't heard that, but that is interesting. If true, that may explain a few things. Yeah, there's so many things going on with Donald Trump. And see, Little Red says, I live in Minnesota and I was at a Minneapolis Children's Hospital this weekend. ICE was there. Yeah, it used to be hospitals, schools, daycare centers, churches were all off limits. This administration tossed that out the window and said, fuck it, we're going to do it anyway. We don't care. Let's push. And we're going to do whatever we want. So they don't care about rules or anything. The cruelty is the point. Patrick says, I believe the airplane accident in Washington with the little girls on ice skating team Olympics. I don't know what you're talking about there with that one. Old Dog says, ICE will be stationed at the gates. I hadn't heard that. There was talk about it at one point, and then the NFL said, no, that we're not going to comply with that. I guess we'll see. But, Donald Trump wants to brag about the economy and how great it is. The Super Bowl is a huge economic boom to the area that actually has it. And if they do something dumb like having ICE at the Super Bowl and it affects the reality, and it affects the local economy, he's going to have to answer for that. VI Uranus says John Brown was an American hero. I don't know what you're talking about with that. Little Red says a lovely gentleman from Beck, Minnesota stood between the ropes and the waiting room. Was that to keep ICE from going in? Because if so, good on him. Or is that ICE trying to keep people from getting into the waiting room? TKS Daddy says DHS fraudulently reclassified all applicants of admission new arrival status to only hearings arrests. Yeah, that's their game plan. They say come and do it the legal way, and then they want to make it hard for you to do it the legal way or impossible. It's ridiculous. The cruelty is the point. Little Red says to keep them from bypassing the hospital security. Oh, okay. Well, that's good. They should be in the way. And, I should not be allowed to just free roam hospitals. I mean, there's enough going on when it comes to people getting treatment. We can't be taking people out of hospitals like that. They need to get the medical care they can. And I don't care what they've done. There are ways to have somebody in custody while they're in a hospital, but ICE wouldn't follow those procedures. They would try to drag them out, IV still attached. It's just cruel. TKS Daddy says immigration judges process sending you out. He got rid of the legal way. Trump got rid of the real judges that process cases and hold hearings. Yeah. Again, they don't want you to do things the legal way. They don't want you coming here at all. Little Red says hospital security called extra officers to the waiting room, but he stood guard until relieved. Good for him. Neil says no one is above the law is a lie. They don't care about the rules. The rules don't apply to them. Yeah, there is. But the thing is, when this administration's gone, there is going to be a reckoning, and they are going to be held accountable. This stuff, a lot of what the ICE is doing, the statute of limitations will not be up by the time the next administration takes over. And there's going to be, I think, a full investigation, and I think there's going to be a lot of people held accountable over it, and it is going to be very public. So we are all very aware of what is going on. Little Red says, I couldn't love my state more than I do now because of how everyone is handling this. Yeah, and Minneapolis got nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. The entire city and the residents for how they have reacted to the whole situation and how they have done it very peacefully. I'm sure Donald Trump is very, very pissed over that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I've been going about 90 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and get this processed and get it posted up over on my YouTube page for those of you that came in late and want to catch the rest of the live. I encourage you to do so. It will be up in video form on my YouTube page at Analyticaliowan. The audio will be up on my Spotify at Analyticaliowan over there as well. I encourage you to check it out, and not just to follow me, but all your favorite creators, because we don't know what is going to happen with this app. Follow them other places where they have their content as well, just in case this thing ends up crashing and burning and going away. So I want to thank you all for taking the time to join me on this live. I hope you guys have a great day, and I will catch you again the next time I go live.